And when you have a platform, especially as a young person, there's a lot to learn. And I just want to make this video to share some of the things that I've learned with any other future young leaders that want to make a difference and want to know what it's going to take to do it. So in 2018, I had the honor of being selected as the Miss University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, or Miss UAPB. And I did one pageant before that. It was the Miss Black and Gold pageant, hosted by the fraternity Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. But before that, I was not a pageant girl. I used to get bullied in school, and that made me very insecure. I actually thought very poorly of pageant girls. I used to think that they were like stuck up and snooty. I didn't see them as just goal-driven women who wanted a platform. But when I got to college, I decided that, maybe that is something that I should try out. I learned that it's one thing to want a position, and it's something entirely different to have the position and carry it well. Because a crown is very heavy, and a crown doesn't have to be a literal crown. It could just be any sort of position or responsibility that you have. To whom much is given, much is required. That is definitely a true statement. I really wanted that platform because I believed in my university. I believed in the town that it was in, Pine Bluff, which is where I still am. And I wanted to show people that the impressions that they had of Pine Bluff and the misconceptions that they had were just not true. I wanted to be someone that could represent for my student body and for the community, to show people like, hey, this is a really great place to be. There's a lot to offer. I went about it in a totally wrong way. When I graduated, that's when I started to focus more on like social media and trying to be like an activist influencer. That sounds so crazy, but I was just not doing it right. Long story short, today I want to give you guys 5 main things that I have learned about having a platform to make a difference at a young age. So number 1, give yourself room to grow. And what do I mean by that? I feel like a lot of times, especially as like younger people, or this is something that I definitely struggle with at least. I did a lot of this. I still do a lot of this. I still talk too much sometimes, but that's probably like one of the worst things you can do if you know that you want to make a difference, because we see it all the time. Even today, everybody loves to cancel people. It's very much a part of human nature. When you see someone that's trying to be big, you want to look for the flaw in that person, because who do they think that they are? What makes them think they could be somebody special? It's just human nature. We could say that it's not right, but it's the way things are. And so you don't want to give people the rope to hang you with. And everything that you say can and will be used against you. You might change your mind in a year or 2 years from now, but what you are saying, especially if you like type something on the internet or take a picture, you can delete it, but somebody's taking a screenshot of that and it's just on the internet somewhere anyway. So you want to be very careful right now, no matter how old you are. If you know you want to have a platform right now, be careful what you say. Be careful about the way you say things. This is another thing I've had to work on. I'm a very matter-of-fact type of person. I'm really working on like softening myself. You don't want to be too sold to like one idea, because as you grow, you might learn that is actually not the case. It's not true. You don't want to offend people who might be very good people in your corner because you were very gung-ho on this idea you had that 2 years from now you might not even feel the same way. So take the time to really study up. I think that you have to find the balance in speaking with conviction. If you don't believe in what you're saying, nobody else is going to believe in you. So you have to find that balance for yourself about how you can say things strongly and firmly, but still respectfully and gently, and also giving yourself room to change your mind and explore new ideas and beliefs. The second thing is you are blazing your own path. No matter how old you are, there's really not a lot of people who will feel comfortable enough to like speak out for things, or run for a position, or just put themselves out there. It's very scary to do that. People are very judgmental, and it's hard to be a leader. It's gonna come with a lot of like scrutiny and a lot of criticism, especially when you are talking about things that are uncomfortable to hear. In my case, I speak a lot about the Black community. I talk about like racism and interracial apathy, so like how we could do more for our communities ourselves. People don't want to hear that. Something that I had to learn was, of course, going back to the first point, I had to give myself room to grow. So already introducing topics that, people didn't want to hear, I had to be more gentle in the way I delivered them because, it's very natural for us not to like things that we've never heard before. But something that I did wrong was I was complaining like, you guys don't support me, you guys don't believe in me, everybody thinks I'm crazy, one day everybody's gonna see y'all freaking out, one day y'all gonna. Girl, nobody wants to hear that, okay? So if I could go back in time, I would tell myself, like, you're blazing your own path, so everybody's not going to understand you. I saw this quote the other day, and it was like, don't be mad when people don't understand your vision. God told you it wasn't a conference call or something like that. And you have to really know that, like, when you're being challenged and when you're being scrutinized and when you feel like people aren't, like, supporting you, you have to know, like, why you're doing it. You have to let the difference that you're trying to make be more important than the validation that you get from your peers, even the people that you're doing it for. It sounds really harsh to say this, but this is how we all are. Like, I have friends that I absolutely love. I would do anything for them, but I have friends who their content, I don't really like it. And that doesn't mean I think less of my friends. It doesn't mean that I don't support them. It just means that I don't like their content. I have friends who are extremely smart. They might be going to med school or dental school or anything like that, but I don't really know the terms and stuff that they use. So when they post content like that, I'm like, oh, I'm really proud of them. They're doing a good job, but I don't know what they're talking about. So I'm not really going to tune into that. Now, I have friends who are in that same, category. And when the pandemic hit, suddenly their content became more interesting to me. So it's all about timing, but had they not put themselves out there as the type of people who are into medical stuff, I probably wouldn't have even checked their page out when the pandemic hit. And so I say that to say, if you are trying to make a difference, if you're passionate about something, even if you're not getting support when you want it, keep doing it, because there may be a lane that's created for you. And if you stay genuine, when people start to realize, what you're doing, they're going to tune in. But if you're not putting yourself out there, even if they're not supporting you now, then when your message is more relevant, for the mainstream, they're not going to know to check you out. So stay consistent with the vision that you feel like God gave you. And even if people don't understand it, try your hardest not to take it personal, because it's really not personal. It may sound crazy, but it's not personal. And another reason why you have to remember that it's not personal is because whether you like it or not, you now have a responsibility. If you want a platform, you have a responsibility. Even if people aren't supporting you visually, you're going to have a lot of people that really are rooting for you, but for some reason, we just don't like to show love as much as we like to show the things that we don't love. I don't know why we're like this, but you'll see people complain quicker than they'll tell you thank you. Even if people really are thankful, they're less likely to say it for some reason. But regardless of that, there are people who are looking up to you and they may never say a word. And it's crazy to think this, but even when they're not defending you, even when, like, let's say somebody's like attacking you and they're not, sticking up for you, if you start stooping down to the level of the people who are coming after you, the people who are supporting you are going to fall back from you. And that's really hard to hear, because it's like you could be doing all this good and you feel like people aren't, noticing that as much or vocal about that as much as when you make mistakes, suddenly the whole world wants to talk about that. And I don't really know why that is, but it is what it is. So you have to make sure that you are carrying yourself well at all times, even though you're young. If you want to kick it, make sure you have a tight circle, because you never know who is going to try to get dirt on you. You never know when they could use that against you. It's just really, it's a cruel world, especially when you're trying to make a difference, because whether you're a Christian or you believe in spirituality, there's good forces and there's bad forces. There's things of God, there's things that are not of God, and they're always at war. They're always at war. It really has nothing to do with you per se, but because of that, if you're trying to be on the side of what's good, you have to carry yourself in a certain way, because there's really not as many people doing that. It's hard to do that. It's uncomfortable to do that, and it's really not what everybody's doing. It's so much easier just to not care. It's so much easier to just do what everybody else is doing. So if you're saying that you want to be different, if you're saying that you want to be a leader or have a platform, you got a little bit more to carry, but it's okay. You can make it look light. So you really have to control your emotions. You have to really work on personal development. What are your triggers? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? What are your fatal flaws? What are things people could use against you? You have to consider all of those things so that you know you before anybody else could do anything against you. Make sure that all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted. Okay, now I honestly feel like before you even think you want to be a leader or have a platform, you should work on your personal development, because you will be tested. You will be tested. The fourth tip is you really want to season your speech. You want to season your speech not just so you don't offend people, but so that you can also persuade people to your cause. And as you start to learn like what things get people to pay attention and what things don't, you'll notice that like the negative forces or the bad forces are already doing this all the time. And something that I notice with people who are even, older or maybe just not as young is people who are on the side of what is good. They find the ways that we have to reach people extra or more work, or people shouldn't need all that, but they do. And what is unfortunate is while there's people who have like the best interest for people in mind, but they're not willing to do what it takes to reach people, while the people who just want to manipulate people and sell people things, they're using everything they have to get people's attention. So you really want to season your speech. Sometimes what you say is just not going to be comfortable to hear. Everybody's not going to like it. But when you say things that they do need to hear, make sure you say it in a way that they want to hear it. Okay, and so lastly, now that I've scared you with all the responsibility you have to do and all of the negativity that may come after you, I just want to remind you to stay humble and that it really is worth it. That's really why I'm making this video, because I hit my head a lot. I wasn't always humble. In fact, humility is something that I'm still working on. I wasn't always seasoned in my speech. I'm still working on it. I wasn't always emotionally mature, and I'm still working on it. But I have worked on those things enough to get to the point where now people are reaching out to me and they want to know what I think, and they want to know how they can help, and they want to know what they can do to push the movement forward. And that's really what it's all about. I don't think that any one person can do everything by themselves. And as an activist that's rooting for the Black community, something that we see a lot, whether it's like Fred Hampton or MLK or even Malcolm X, is once those leaders pass, nobody is really like ready to carry the torch forward. The momentum dies. And something that I feel like, my generation, I feel like one thing that we should do a little bit differently is make sure that, we're lifting as we climb. We're networking horizontally, and we're not just trying to see who's above us that can help us. We're trying to spread the knowledge around so that if something happens to me, there's somebody else that's like around my age or younger that knows what to do, that has the tips and the tricks that they need to make a difference. It just kind of comes down to like nobody wants to hear that it takes work. So if you want to be a leader, you want to motivate people to do stuff, like nobody wants to hear that. So you have to like prepare yourself. You have to understand like what you're up against. It's something that I didn't know, and so I complained a lot. I was always in my feelings, struggled a lot of times just to not even want to do it anymore. I literally used to pray to God, like, God, take this dream away from me. I don't want it anymore. I am always alone. Nobody understands me. People hate me. Like it gets a little bit heavy sometimes, but now I'm at the point where now that I am past all of that, it's like I still love those people. The people who say that I'm crazy, or the people who think I'm doing too much or I care too much. Like, I don't take it personally anymore. And now that I'm at that point where I've healed and I understand what it is, the blessings are now starting to come. The platform is starting to rise. More people are starting to join the movement, because leadership is hard, but the alternative is to continue to see that things are not what they need to be and watch them get worse. Because when you don't take action, things don't stay the same. The forces that are, making the problems that, are what they are, they're not going to sit back. They're making good money off of people, not caring. They're making good money off people making bad decisions and not having disciplines. People don't like what's going on, but they don't want to make a difference, or they don't believe they can make a difference. And I really believe that everybody can. Like, I feel like no matter where you are or what platform or title you have a sphere of influence. People are looking up to you. People are looking at you, if for nothing else than how you make them feel. And trust me, that's really more important than what you know anyways. And so when you can become knowledgeable, when you can become intentional, and you know how to make people feel good, it's a win-win situation. Even though the journey is a little bit challenging at times, and even though I feel like the mainstream message is, you know, don't worry about anything that doesn't bring you happiness, focus on you, don't waste your time on other people. Like I feel like leadership is a labor of love. I feel like leadership is not always going to be comfortable, and a lot of times you will probably catch a lot of flack for how you feel, especially when it goes against the grain, goes against the things that the people on the wrong side are trying to impose on people. You're going to catch a lot of flack because it's uncomfortable to not know something. We all have a self-esteem immune system, so it's easier for us to judge people who we don't understand and think something is wrong with them than to examine ourselves and consider that there might be something we actually don't know, especially when it's presented in a way that is jarring to us. Do know that like there are a lot of benefits to it. Like to know that you can make a difference that will last for years to come from a Christian standpoint, to know that you can be a part of God's plan for the world, like that's a huge honor. That's something that is going to last when the trends fade away, you know, when the opinions fade away. The work that you put in is going to be something that stays. It's going to be something that makes a difference for years to come. So please be encouraged. And if you have any tips for me or anything that you've learned on your journey, I would love to hear those things. Okay, I feel like we are all always growing. I know that there's still more work I need to do, so I would love to hear what you guys know as well. Please share some tips with me in the comments below. And until next time, family, seek the kingdom and serve your community.